Here's something many veterans never realize. If a condition the VA already rated has gotten worse over the years, you don't have to simply live with it. You can ask the VA to raise your rating to match how bad things are for you now, and if you handle the timing correctly, that raise can come with months of back pay. In this video, I'll walk you through exactly how to do that, in plain language. We'll cover when it makes sense to file, the one rule that decides how much back pay you receive, the forms you'll actually use, and the part many people miss, which is how filing for more can sometimes lower your rating instead of raising it. Let's start with what a rating really is, because understanding this makes the rest much easier. Every condition the VA rates has a diagnostic code, and each code is built in levels, 10%, 30, 50, and so on. Each level has its own specific list of symptoms the VA looks for. Here's why that matters, using a real example. Say you have a service-connected back. To reach the 40% level, the rules require your forward bend to measure 30 degrees or less, and an examiner measures that with a tool. Simply feeling stiffer than last year isn't enough. The measurement itself has to reach that level. So how do you find your own? Your VA decision letter lists each condition, its evaluation, and the effective date, but usually not the diagnostic code. To get the codes, you request a separate document called your rating code sheet, which the VA doesn't send automatically. Or you look the condition up in the rating schedule yourself. So take your condition to the VA's rating schedule, the official rulebook that's free and public online, and read the criteria written for the level just above yours. Staying with the back, the difference between 40 and 50% is large. 50 generally requires the spine to be frozen in place, which the rules call unfavorable ankylosis. Now set those criteria next to your own recent medical records and compare them honestly, one item at a time. And there's a rule that works in your favor. You don't have to meet every single criterion for the higher level. If your overall picture more nearly matches the higher rating than the lower one, the rules say you receive the higher rating and any reasonable doubt is resolved in your favor. With that in mind, 3 things should all be true before you file. The first is straightforward but honest. You have to be clearly worse, not about the same. The symptoms that used to be manageable now interfere with your day, your sleep, or your ability to work. The second is that the evidence has to support it. The VA won't simply take your word that things got worse. They look for it in your records, a treatment note, a recent diagnosis, test results, something dated that shows the worst picture. If it isn't written down somewhere, the system treats it as if it didn't happen. The third is the one people most often get wrong. The worsening has to actually reach the next level. If you're rated at 30% and the evidence still only supports 30, the claim won't succeed, even though you really are worse. That's why the comparison matters. Your records have to meet the next level's criteria, not simply show that the year was harder. Now let's talk about timing, because it matters more than most people realize. Normally, when the VA grants a claim, your back pay only reaches back to the day you filed it. An increase is the exception, and the exception works in your favor. There's a rule that lets your effective date, which is simply the date your raise officially starts, reach back as far as 1 year before you filed. The exact wording is what matters. It reaches back to the earliest date. Your records can actually prove your condition got worse. Here's how that works in practice. Suppose your condition clearly got worse in January, but you didn't file until November. If a medical record from January shows you were worse then, the VA can set your start date all the way back to January. For the same claim, that's about 10 extra months of back pay. There's one important condition on this. That earlier start date only works if a dated record proves it. If you file in November and nothing in your file shows you were worse any earlier, your start date is simply November, and those earlier months of back pay are lost. This changes the order most people follow. Most veterans wait until they're ready to file and then see a doctor. The better approach is the reverse. Go in when the condition is actually flaring or clearly worse, and make sure it's written into your record that day. That dated note is what supports your back pay later. When you're ready to file, start by securing your date, even before you've gathered everything. You do that with an intent to file. It's a short form, VA Form 21-0966, that you submit online at va.gov. Filing it tells the VA a claim is coming and holds your start date in place while you gather your evidence. While you're gathering, be clear about what strong evidence looks like, because this is where many claims fall short. A simple list of complaints isn't enough. What helps is a recent note from a doctor who treats you, describing how the condition limits you now and where it applies, the measurements or test results the rating criteria are based on. Once your evidence is ready, you file the increase itself, again at va.gov on the Disability Compensation Form numbered 21526. Mark clearly that you're claiming an increase on a condition you're already rated for, and attach your current evidence, including the dated record described earlier. One note for a common situation. If your claim was recently decided and closed, and you now have new and relevant evidence, you can file what's called a supplemental claim instead on VA Form 20-0995. It leads to the same result, and the chapter on appeals explains when that's the better choice. Now we reach the part that requires real care, and it's the reason timing matters so much. Filing for an increase almost always brings a new exam, usually called a C&P exam. Here's why. The VA's own rules let them re-examine you anytime the evidence suggests your condition has changed, and by filing, you've told them in writing that it has. That exam is a fresh look at where you stand today, and that's why it carries risk in both directions. If the examiner decides you've actually improved since your last rating, the VA can lower your rating instead of raising it. That's the real risk of reopening a rating you already hold, and it's the reason you only do this when you're genuinely worse. So go into that exam prepared, and this matters more than people expect. Describe your worst days, not your best ones, because the VA is supposed to rate you on how bad the condition gets, not on how you happen to feel that morning. Bring your current records, and don't minimize your symptoms out of pride. Being honest about how difficult things really are is what helps you. Now, an important protection. The VA can't lower your rating without warning. Before they reduce anything, they have to send you a written notice that states what they're proposing and exactly why. You then have the right to request a hearing, and if you request it within 30 days, your payments continue at the current level until the matter is actually decided. Time also works in your favor. The longer you've held a rating, the harder it becomes to reduce. Once a rating has been in place for 5 years or more, the VA can't lower it based on a single ordinary exam. They have to show that you've genuinely and lastingly improved, not simply that one examiner saw you on a better day. 100% rating has the strongest protection of all. The VA can't reduce it unless an exam shows real improvement in your everyday life, meaning you're actually able to work or return to a normal routine, not simply that you felt better at the appointment. If you're at 100% or your rating is marked permanent and total, think carefully before you reopen anything. Before you file, it's worth knowing about 2 other paths, because sometimes one of them is the better option. The first is TDIU. That stands for total disability based on individual unemployability, and in plain terms, if your service-connected conditions prevent you from working steadily, it can pay you at the full 100% rate even without a 100% rating. The second path is a secondary claim. If your worsening condition has caused a brand new problem, for example, a bad knee that changed the way you walk and began wearing out your hip, that hip isn't part of your increase. It's a separate, new claim, and filing it counts as one of the most overlooked ways to raise your overall rating. Let's bring together the mistakes that cost veterans the most so you can avoid them. The first is filing with no dated record of when you actually got worse. Without that record, you give up the entire 1-year look back, and your back pay starts only from the day you filed, not a day earlier. The second mistake is filing when you're honestly about the same. If you're not clearly worse, you give the re-exam a chance to find improvement, and you can ask for more and end up with less. When you're unsure, wait until you're genuinely worse and you can prove it. A few more are worth remembering. Don't disturb a long-held or 100% rating without strong proof of worsening. Don't skip the re-exam, because missing it can be treated as a denial. And don't fold a brand new secondary condition into your increase when it deserves a claim of its own. So here's your plan, in clear steps. First, be honest with yourself about those 3 questions. Are you clearly worse than when you were last rated? Can you prove it with records, and does the evidence actually reach the next level for your condition? If you can answer yes to all 3, you have a real claim. Second, if you're worse, get that dated medical record now, while the symptoms are clear, and file your intent to file the same day. Those 2 steps together are what protect up to a year of back pay before you send anything else in. Third, file the increase with your current evidence attached. Before you do, check 2 things. How long you've held this rating, since 5 years or a permanent rating brings the stronger protections we covered, and whether you're ready for the exam. Then file, and don't leave behind money you've already earned. Here's the whole thing, simply. A condition that's genuinely worse, a record that proves when it worsened, and patience with the timing can turn into a higher rating and back pay that reaches into the past. Rush it or skip the proof, and you can end up worse off than when you started. Now you know how to do this correctly. If this helped you understand your benefits a little better, please subscribe so the next veteran can find it too, and share it with someone you know who's been carrying a rating that should be higher. The full chapter, with every form and citation, is coming soon. Thank you for spending this time with me, and take care of yourself.